then we find that local, national and regional values and culture generally evolve into a particularistic vision and way of life of people, like Eurocentrism. Values which were European, some values are common, like individualism, materialism, entrepreneurialism. Everyone wants to be entrepreneur, want to be a producer of objects, so one can control economy of people. This is Eurocentric approach. Eurocentric approach means look on everything from the viewpoint of benefit that Europe gets from it. Everything controlled by European powers. Similarly, universal values are transcendent, they go beyond, they are not limited. They carry a global applicability. For example, truth or sidq, or justice or adl, or trustworthiness or amana, fulfillment of contracts, uqud, steadfastness, sabr and istiqama. All these values are universal. These values are not a monopoly of Muslims. If a Chinese works with more istiqama than a Muslim, the law of nature is he must succeed. If Muslims sleep like lazy people and others practice those values, then it is fault of Muslims, not of values. Universal values are such, whoever accepts those and applies those are going to pay. Therefore, universal values are absolute and not variable. You hear people saying we need a new version of Islam, and quite often a new narrative. The word narrative is used again and again to show intellectual capacity. We want a new narrative. What is your narrative? The Quran has provided a narrative which is universal. It remains like that because it is objective and universal. You cannot have for every century a new Quran, a new Bayaniya, but you can always have new approaches and understanding which is not Bayaniya. Anyhow, so the universality of values means they are absolute, not variable, they do not change. You cannot say that time has changed, now we should not have any concept of haya. Haya was for a society which was very primitive, agricultural, where people were limited or people were vicious. Now people are more civilized. They have changed their nature. So, you do not need haya at all, but you can have as much nakedness, obscenity as possible without any problems. Values, universal values are absolute. They are not situational. They are not relative either. It is not possible that adl may be for you and not for me. They are not subject to social evolution. The mindset which we have inherited as Muslims or as people of the world is everything has been evolving. Therefore, morality has evolved. You have books on moral evolution, social evolution, economic evolution. But Islamic paradigm tells us Islamic values are not evolutionary. Islamic values are absolute. They are for all times. They do not need to be changed and modified. No need to apologize for them. Universal values, last point, address whole of humanity. They are not for specific people. Without discrimination of color, gender, race, language, we do not have male values and female values. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants women to be modest, then the same ayah which is asking them, ask men to be modest. When the Quran says, believing men keep gazes down at the same time says believing women keep gazes down. When the Quran says they guard their chastity, both are addressed specifically, no differentiation. Therefore, Islamic values transcend gender. There are some, I would call them rather less informed people who have come up with the idea that most of tafsir are written by men. Now we need a female tafsir by some female to be done. What does that mean? Does that mean that tafsir are written with a male chauvinistic approach, or they are written with an understanding of what is the meaning of the word lexicon, what is the meaning literary, what is the meaning in terms of application, what is the meaning in terms of law, what is the meaning in terms of aqidah, what is the meaning in terms of culture and civilization. These are the approaches by which tafsir have been written, not with a male view or a female view. Therefore, values are above gender consideration. They are above language, territorial or nationality or economic status. There are no values for rich people other than the poor people. One and same value. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants every single person to obey these values irrespective of what is one's status. Universal values have an innate mechanism to develop sub-values, adapt ways that do not conflict with these basic values, and help in making life easy, fair and dignified for humanity. An obvious example is of adl. I am using these words very carefully. Every single word has a background. What I am saying here is that universal values have a tendency, under them we can have sub values, but these sub values do not conflict, because the higher objective is yusr, easiness, higher objective is adl, fairness, higher objective is dignity of humanity, ikram of humanity. All these values which are there in the Quran, these values determine how sub values are to emerge. So, universal particular values can be illustrated by various Quranic themes and concepts. In front of you is one which is dealing with adl and ihsan. The Quranic sociology does not accept local, tribal, regional origin of values and religious visions. Values in Islam come from beyond. Society is to be structured and developed on the basis of values and not the contrary. You will hear even millions of Muslims saying, time has changed, now women should not wear that kind of dress which they were wearing 10 years back, because time has changed. Now they must have some modern dress, because we are living in modern time. Islamic values do not change. They have no such concept of society determining what is right and wrong. On the contrary, it wants society to conform with values, society to be created where these values are living and applied. So, what we are saying here is social construction of reality should take place in the light of divine guidance. These terms are used in social sciences, where we say that X and Y and Z are social construct, which means it is based on society. Society has agreed to call it in a way. In Islam, it is not society. It is the Quranic text, prophetic example and elaboration that decides what a thing is to be called. A murder is to be called a murder, not something different. An act of kindness is to be called act of khair and virtue and bir, and not something else. All these aspects are defined by universal values, and therefore we do not have particular cultures and particular behaviors developed in the name of Balochism, Pashtunism, Sindhism, Punjabiism or Turkeyism and so on and so forth.